Welcome back to CEEN Caribbean News. It's now time to go in depth. A few weeks ago, campaign director for the ruling People's National Party, PNP, Dr. Peter Phillips, told party delegates to get the election machinery ready. Does this mean that Jamaica's Prime Minister, Mrs. Portia Simpson Miller, could call general elections constitutionally due in 2016 this year? The PNP is amidst rigorous wage negotiations, and the opposition Jamaica Labour Party JLP is fresh off handling some internal wranglings that have been plaguing the party all year. Both parties are also coping with tumultuous candidate selection processes. Are either political powerhouses ready for early polls? We analyze that topic right now on Indepth, and to do so, we have been joined by political analyst Mr. Troy Kane. Welcome to Indepth, Mr. Kane.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Now, should the governing PNP call elections this year, how would it benefit them?
Well, it will help them in, I guess, depending on how the polls go, getting them back to power before their 5-year term is up, so they would have an opportunity to sustain their administration and consolidate whatever power they have. And that is generally the habit of political parties that call either what are called early elections or snap elections. And as it is, the People's National Party, PNP, has never shirked away from calling an early election, because no PNP administration in the history of Jamaica's politics have gone a full 5-year term. The one that got closest to 5 years was, in fact, the one between 2002 and 2007, which went to actually 4 years and 11 months. So most of the elections called by PNP administrations have been early. And that is why I guess most people expect that, you know, with all that is happening, with all the wranglings in the Labour Party and the problem with their leadership and so on, and you know, what they perceive as their accomplishments in the last 3-4 years, right? And so on, I guess they feel confident they can retain power.
Right now, they're amidst brutal wage negotiations and the hardships being complained about under the IMF. Do you really think the PNP stand a good chance of returning to office if they call elections right now?
Well, you know, I'm Candice, I don't think that issues like the IMF really impact very much on Jamaica's elections. You know, although, you know, you have complaints by the ordinary people that in spite of all the tests that Dr. Phillips has passed, that hasn't filtered down to their benefit. In that the cost of living is still high, people are still losing jobs, there's a lot of unemployed, a lot of negative things happening. Oh, there might be positives in terms of our economy, which it barely increases by less than 1%, right? Which is nothing to be proud of. But you know, elections in Jamaica are really fought on the ground, in the constituencies, right? And that is why the two parties are so entrenched in our political system here. You know, because generally people here in Jamaica vote for the party, not so much for the candidates. And by extension, they vote for a prime minister, right? For a certain individual as prime minister, although there's not an exact balance where you vote for the prime minister, like say in the United States and so on, right? So that wouldn't stop the PNP from calling an early election at all, no.
The Jamaica Labour Party says it is ready for general elections, even if they were called tomorrow morning. But with the scandals that have rocked the party all year, taking into consideration that 50% of the party's MPs doubt Andrew Holness's ability to lead the party, does the JLP stand a good chance of wresting the reins of government from the PNP in potential early polls?
It is going to be very doubtful. It's a very steep mountain for the JLP to climb. Of course, you know, in politics, you know, nothing is impossible. Right, but the JLP is not a very united party right now. Nor for that matter is the PNP, based on certain things that are happening. Because I don't know if the next question you was about to ask me is what is happening in the PNP. But what is happening in the PNP is unusual, historically and otherwise. This has never happened in Jamaica before. Where here is 7-8 seats of PNP representation, some of which are die-hard PNP seats, we are on what is perceived as the eve of a general election. There are people challenging the sitting members. I mean, even a councillor is challenging an MP in her constituency for the right to contest the seat in the next election. These things don't generally happen. And, you know, in more recent times, when they do happen, they really happen in the JLP. Not in the PNP, we're not used to seeing this kind of disarray. I mean, you hear people talk about democracy at work and all that. That is all well and good. That is one way of putting it. You hear them talk, well, you know, the politics have reached a stage where a certain caliber of young people are entering the system, and they're very, they want to get far very quickly in the politics. And this is the reason why all of this is happening. All that is well and good. But on the surface of it, it doesn't make the parties look very good, especially PNP right now, because it must affect their PR. The only difference between the PNP and the JLP is that the PNP will continue to do well because of their core support, right? And the amount of vote, even when there is an apathy in the whole political system in Jamaica, where the core voters are going to vote, it will always be the PNP who stands a better chance of getting their voters out to the polls. Although, of course, there will always be exceptions to the rule.
Mm-hmm. Now, earlier you mentioned that people in Jamaica vote for Prime Minister, and Your Holiness has consistently been high in popularity votes. Don't you think it would work the same way for the JLP if persons are voting for Your Holiness rather than for other members of the party?
That is a secondary reason. I think I hear people talking. I hear people in the media talking about people in Jamaica vote for Prime Minister. Not really. They vote for the party. But by extension, when you vote for the party, the head of the party becomes Prime Minister. And I think that is what I was alluding to, right? Because, you know, Mr. Andrew Holness is a case in question in that, if you recall, back in the leading up to the 2011 election, no politician in Jamaica was more popular than Andrew Holness. And in fact, when they did polls, that is why all the other aspirants for leadership in the Labour Party capitulated and threw in the towel and say, Andrew, you gone, you know? And he lost by a landslide, right? He lost 2-1, right? So, you know, I don't know about voting for Prime Minister per se as against voting for the party. And the same thing goes for Mrs. Miller. People are not voting for Mrs. Miller, they're voting for the PNP. They're voting for PNP. They're in PNP constituencies voting for their candidates, right? And as a result, Mrs. Miller ended up being Prime Minister because she leaves the PNP, right? I'm not saying she doesn't have a very heavy core support as a political leader, not at all. But the principle of the thing is that the people vote for the parties.
What do you think the Jamaica Labour Party needs to do to convince the nation that they are indeed ready for government? This is after 2 leadership battles twice already this year.
Perhaps getting a new leader. But the point is that, first of all, Mr. Holness became leader of the party in 2011 under sort of spurious circumstances, and more or less recommended by outgoing leader Bruce Golding. And then he dropped the ball. He lost the election. He called the election at the wrong time. Nobody calls an election between Christmas and New Year. There have been, out of the 15 or 16 general elections called in Jamaica, 6 of those elections have been called in December. And he's the only leader that has lost a December election, because all the other elections were called either early in December or prior to Christmas. You can't be calling an election between Christmas and New Year when all the money is spent and all the excitement is done and all that. And you're not sure, even if you're in power, you're not sure that you have that amount of strength. And clearly they never did enough research on their own chances, you know. So, you know, this is the problem. I mean, shortly after that, by 2013, he found himself in a contest against Audley Shaw. Well, it was an impressive win, but then he got 2,700 votes. Audley Shaw got over 2,000 votes. So I wouldn't say it's split down the middle, but Shaw got a very respectable amount of the ballots of the delegates. And then sometime, when was it? Early this year or late last year, there was another ballot, another vote of the elected members. The result turned out to be 13-7, I believe it was. And then just a few months ago now, when they had the last one, it was heading to 11-10 against Hornis. But apparently they succeeded in convincing Mr. Hutchinson not to switch sides, right? And when the other side found out it was going to be 10-all, they just gave up and allowed Andrew Hornis to make a presentation to them and so on, and they never got a ballot. Had there been a ballot, it would have been 10-all, which would have shown that his leadership had eroded much more from 13-7 to 10-all, right? So, you know, he's existing now as leader and a very sticky wicket, so to speak.
Now, the last time elections were held was in the December period. You just gave us some details about elections called during this time of the year. Should the PNP decide to call elections, the only time available for this year is the Christmas period. What do you predict would happen if they did that?
Well, as I said, it is based on what I'm seeing. It is going to be very difficult for the JLP. I think the chances are much better for the PNP, because for every election you have to look how the parties performed in the previous election, and on the basis of the results of the previous election, out of 63 seats, you're looking at something like 24, 25 safe seats for the PNP even before the election is called. Whereas on the JLP side, they probably have maybe 16 or 17 safe seats, right? So I mean, all the PNP needs another 6 or 7 seats, and they're over the top, right? And I think this is the kind of advantage on paper that the PNP has over the JLP right now, unless you know, a lot of things happen, unless maybe the people get turned off and all the foolishness that is happening in the PNP now with the people, with the whole heap of challenges and so on, or unless the PNP, you know, do anything wrong before calling the election, that or what the people perceive as wrong. So anything can happen. As they say, in politics is like 100 years, or vice versa.
Speaking of the people of this country, is Jamaica ready for another general election?
Well, because Jamaica is generally what you might call a political country, I would say the Jamaica is ready for election anytime. The snappiest election that was called was really Mr. Siaga back in 1983, but most people wouldn't remember that that is not the shortest term. The shortest term of administration was Mr. Norman Manley's administration between July 1959 and April 1962, which was only 2 years and 9 months. At least Mr. Siaga's one was over 3 years. So what I'm trying to say is that we have had very short terms, and we have had long terms, and all the terms that have gone a full 5 years or a little over have been JLP terms, right? Most of the PNP terms are called within 4 years and 7 months, 4 years and 8 months, 4 years and 3 months, and so on. And as I said earlier, 4 years and 11 months, right? So, you know, it all started when Mr. Norman Manley called elections, which they called it back in 59 a snap election in July 59 when the administration was just 4 years and a few months old, you know. So the trend has continued. So yes, Jamaica is largely will participate in an election at any time. But you know, Candice, as you might have been noticing, what is really affecting Jamaican politics more than anything else, perhaps more than the politicians, is the apathy towards the politics by the voters. Because, you know, we started out very low back in 1944. I think it was a 57% turnout of voters. And it reached a high in 1980 when we had 86 point something, nearly 87% turnout of voters. After that, since that, it has been a downhill. In 2011, the voter turnout was lower than it was in 1944. It was 52 point something.
We have to cut it there, Mr. Kane.
Yes.
Thank you very, very much for the insight.
Okay.
We were just joined by political analyst Mr. Troy Kane discussing whether or not the country and its two major political parties are in fact ready for early polls, as is being speculated.